Hello, it's James. Here's a thing I've made. This is called Benny. It is a kind of modular playground for live music making. I made it so I could do my live set the way I wanted to do it, but this is like the 5th version, and it's become something that I think maybe other people will enjoy. I like the idea that by kind of changing the music software's kind of emphasis, you might change the output that you get out of it. I've thought about this quite a lot. So I'm just going to whiz through roughly how to use it, and probably won't cover everything, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of an overview. So everything's modular in Benny. There's the core program does almost nothing, but these are called blocks, and blocks do everything. So when it loads up, you've got a block that's your hardware outputs, your main outputs of the I've got my MIDI keyboard that comes out of this block, and go on, I'll show you. So when I play the keyboard, you can see this meter on the block itself showing you the highest and lowest notes and velocities that are happening in that frame of video. The same for my MIDI controller that I have attached. That comes out of a block. If I had 2 MIDI controllers, I would add another block that would be the other MIDI controller. Here's a clock which gives you kind of tempo, divisions, some kind of swing, looseness controls, whatever. To get more blocks, you double click, or you press enter, or you start typing. So here we go. Here's an audio block. This is an oscillator, or you can slow it down and it's an LFO. It's got lots of shapes. So on sliders, the scroll wheel works, shift, dragging works obviously, shift does fine, alt shift does super fine. Alt click takes you back to the default for the block, or if you've loaded a song, it takes you back to the value that slider was on when you loaded the song, if that makes sense. And you can see every audio block tends to have 2 ins and outs. The oscillator has like a main and a sub out, and the main has got a shape that you can apply to it. This, you can zoom in and out on these scopes if you want, scroll wheel or dragging. What's cool about Benny is that everything can just instantly become polyphonic. So you click something, you press plus, and it just adds more voices. So here we go, there's 4 voices of oscillator. So to make a connection, you just drag something onto something, and it brings up that. And if you click on the wire, you can edit the connection settings. Control click the wire, toggles mute. Control click the block, toggles mute. Here's the connection settings. You can see you've got your different outputs from the thing. It's got 4 voices, so you can choose. Maybe I only want to connect the first voice, or 1 and 4, or all of them. And you can also, because you've got 4 outputs going to 2 inputs, so this thing lets you control how they're kind of balanced between them. Go, and that's where it's routed to. So then, if you've got rather than the things just being dumb and polyphonic, it's not just 4 identical oscillators. If you hold down Control while you mouse over these, or if you just select a voice in this bit up here, block is everything, voice, then you can adjust individual bits of these sliders. It's just it's horrible. That's a lovely example. Let's just turn this. So every connection has a gain control as well in it. If you click that, it toggles between. So, and you can do, if you've got it in that view where you've got one slider selected, if you hold down Alt, you can kind of spread things around it. Where am I? Yeah, cool. But I'm going to add another one of these LFOs. You don't just have to route audio to audio. Audio can be routed to anything. So I'm gonna so let's pull this up. In fact, I'm going to talk through MIDI first. So this is Voice Basic, which is a very simple oscillator, envelope, PCA in one block. And there we go. Because the keyboard is set to auto assign, when you click on something, the keyboard gets assigned to it. You can lock it by clicking that. So now when I click away, it's still assigned. You could also, if it wasn't done like that, you could also just drag it on like that. But let's not bother for now. So there we go. Let's take the sub out of this LFO and show you that you can modulate a parameter with it. I've connected it to shape, and then you've got a scale you can scale that modulation there. If you click it, it takes you back into there. If I click this, that'll take you into you can kind of navigate the tree of stuff by clicking sort of through. Anyway, let's get back to here. So now, and there's no limit to the number of different things that can modulate any one parameter. You could just connect loads of stuff into it. It's fine. It can just do it. It's the modulation system is designed to keep running efficiently no matter how much you add to it. In theory. But also, so we haven't finished yet. This LFO, we can also map it to MIDI, so we just connect it to the MIDI input of this. So you can see on the scope, it's taken the level of that LFO and turning it into a velocity. But because an audio signal is one-dimensional, a MIDI signal is two-dimensional because it's got pitch and velocity. So this bit lets you choose how that is assigned. I'll unmute so you can hear. If I rotate this little thing, it's now turning that audio signal into both pitch and, so if I put it horizontal, there you go, it's just pitch of this, right? And I'll need to offset the velocity a bit so it's loud enough, and maybe offset because it's bipolar. Let's offset it and reduce so if I point this sort of down, then you can see the thing follows it. A useful thing, for example, right, let's insert, here you've got insert into this connection. Let's add scale contours. Which isn't any different because I haven't defined a scale. So here we go, it's added. So scales are defined in a block, everything's in a block. So here it's added the scales block, and if I just, I'm just going to play in some notes. No, that's a bad chord. There we go, so there's a scale that I've played in with my MIDI keyboard. And then that's that's the first voice of the scales block, so that's the first scale that's defined, and then hopefully, there we go. The LFO is now being transposed within that scale, but it's still got the old kind of settings. I'm sure there are loads of musical uses for that. Right, so anything can be mapped to anything, polyphony. have I shown you the right? So hopefully this is beginning to make sense. Let's, for example, there are a bunch of sequences up here. I've got, yeah, this is a good example. Blocks can, as well as all these parameters here, look, there's an edit here, and it brings up a full page kind of editor where you can put in a sequence. You can double click the block to bring that up as well. So these, anything that's a sequencer generally expects to get a clock and then be routed to that. I'll mute that scale quantizer and then there we go. So the clock was playing the step sequencer, which is playing the, yeah, you understand. I don't, yeah. Okay. So up here, you can see when auto assign is turned on for the keyboard, or auto assign is turned on for the MIDI controller, then it will auto assign. It works really well with the MIDI Fighter Twister because that's encoders with LEDs for value and RGB LEDs to help you see what things are mapped to what. But it does work with, you can make it work with any controller. What you can't see is when I click on things, now it's kind of lighting up the LEDs to match the layout of these controls, and I can just kind of anything. It's all really quick to just grab a control and change it on there. You can also lock it, so the keyboard is currently on there. If I click that, then it's locked to it, and then when I go away, you can see it stays still there, still locked. And the same with the controls. So there's me. I can adjust that, and then I can go away and carry on adjusting that. Okay, moving on. So this is the structure of your patch, and you could build a song in it, but to perform it, this is a little bit cumbersome, I guess. So there's some things to help with that. There's, as well as the auto assign mode for the MIDI controller, you can just drag from it, and it's got as many outputs as there are knobs and buttons. It has auto, so I'm going to just turn a knob and it selects it. And then you assign to where it's going. There you go. So now I've made a permanent mapping from this MIDI controller to, but that's only active when it's not doing its auto assign mode thing. And the LEDs on the controller will go to a sort of a different, only the ones that are connected to something light up, and you can choose the colors for them over here. So your MIDI, when the MIDI controller is not in that kind of auto map mode, that's your like performance preset for this song, I guess. So you're building up a set of controls to control the song, but even that's not going to be enough. So there's this view, which is I call the panels page. So any block can have a panel. If the block has an interface, like this step sequencer, it can draw its interface on the panel, and you can see whatever that is. Or if it doesn't, or if it does, you can choose under settings to assign which parameters you want to assign to the panel to be visible and editable there. Also under block settings, you can just disable the panel and get rid of it altogether. If you control click that panels button, you can edit this view by moving things around and removing things, whatever. So when I'm playing a live set, this is the page I look at, basically, and you can, if you click on the block, you can select it and go into kind of more detail on it, or you can just be playing. Let me, yeah, what's a good thing to show? Okay, let's load this. It's a poor example. Here we go. Here's a funny noise patch. Free clock is a clock that's always running. It's not connected to the main transport control. It's going into delay to the output, and it's all modulated by an LFO. Isn't that lovely? These colours you can assign to each block. Let's say, I think this is good, imagine that, and I want to save that, so I just store it to a state, and now this purple colour remembers this setting. If I go back, there you go, it remembers it. And you can remember them per block. On the panels view you can see like per block, if it's got a stored state you can kind of recall it, but also for globally you can kind of put them into. Also with a long click on these you can then drag to do a sort of crossfade between states, and all the parameters are smoothly kind of moving across as you do that. Okay, let's load another song just to show some more bits and pieces. Oh yeah, okay. I can't actually demo this because my modular isn't plugged in, but I'll talk you through it. The idea is that you make a hardware file and you tell it everything that's connected to the computer. There's a hardware editor that I won't show you, but it works. So this is the hardware file for my Tor modular, and you can see there's a bunch of, these are some modular filters that are permanently patched in, and it knows. So what's cool about that is that you've just got, here's a hardware filter that's in the same world as all the software stuff, and you can, so you can deal with it in that same way. It's abstracted. You're not having to think about, oh, it's on input 3, output 4. Just don't have to think about it at all. It's just a filter that's there. You can also swap. So if I don't like the sound of that filter, I can just kind of click swap and go, let's try the SH101 instead. And if it was plugged in, you'd hear a really big difference. And it's okay. What else do I need to demonstrate? Also, with regards to this stuff, if you can also define substitutes. So in my hardware file, I've told it this SH101 filter is a filter. If it's not present, it will load up a software equivalent. So if I get to a gig and my synth doesn't make it off the plane or whatever, I can literally just play the gig on software and it will drop into every song. It will just reconfigure it around what I've got and what I haven't got. If something blows up, I can take it out of the hardware file and it will just, Benny will reconfigure himself around it. Okay, did I demonstrate? Problem is, because this video has gone wrong so many times, I've forgotten what I've shown already. Have I shown the spreader for stereo? You can kind of, this is how you spread multiple outputs to multiple inputs. I think I did, didn't I? Let's just whiz through the interface quickly. This is a CPU meter, which is shown very high because the sound driver of this laptop is rubbish. Don't be alarmed by that. With a real sound card, you'd expect it to be nice, low, stable values down here. And then it shows you kind of resource utilization, but also if you're programming your own blocks, this is useful because you can click on one and then alt click. I won't do it because it'll stop the recording, but that would bring up the max patch so you can edit your blocks. And it also shows you that they mute themselves. If there's no audio going through, it turns itself off. So the line through it is, this block has gone to sleep, it's not doing anything, kind of thing. Also does stuff, because one song is one patch, the idea is that your live set, you'll be loading the next song. So to do that quickly, it tries to sort of recycle code for patches that have already been loaded. It's already loaded all the waves for your set. So a set is the folder, and when it starts up, it reads everything in the folder, preloads all the waves, tries to minimize load times for everything that's in that folder. If you change the folder, then whatever. So here's my live set. I think Control and Space loads the next song. So yeah, here we go. That's different. But let's load. The computer's gonna melt. I'm not gonna try and play this because you don't need to here. It takes ages to load this one, particularly because it's got loads of blocks. There we go. So the play button is grey until it's finished loading. And here you go. We can see. So I've named, for example, here's an interesting thing on the scenes. The states, you can name them, and you can control click on things. Basically, it's for sort of unmute all. Is a nice. In it is the sort of load up state of your song. What I want to show is here's a sort of stem player device, which uses, so I haven't, the waves page. So the waves page, you can load waves in, you can put a grid on them. It's got, rudimentary kind of zoom and whatever. This bit does need work, I'll be honest. And in the end, it will have flexible grids. At the moment, it's a fixed grid. But this block called Wave Scan lets you kind of move through. It quantized in time, having told it where the grid is and how many beats each grid line is. Then you can just kind of jump through stems, which for the few bits and pieces that you're not going to actually synthesize live or recreate, it's quite a useful way of kind of turning a static performance into something that you can then like re-perform by messing. Yeah, I don't want to mess around too much with that. Okay, actually I'll show you something on this. This song, this laptop's not really fast enough to... See how these are wiggling a little bit? You can assign parameters as if they're kind of flocked. Where's the controls for that? There we go. So, as if they're kind of attached to sort of physical entities. So these are the value that I set with the slider. It's as if the actual value is a weighted mass on a spring with some degree of repulsion from the other values. So as you can see, when I leave them all in the same place, I turned all the knobs to the bottom, they don't want to sit together, so they kind of do this little dance of kind of, and this is the pitch of an arpeggio, so it kind of moves. I've got 3 arpeggios, but they're kind of moving out of each other's way, trying not to play exactly the same notes as a result of the flocking. I'll show you how to assign that. It's under block settings, flock, you assign. On assign, you choose which parameter is which axis in that kind of 3D space. And then there's a whole bunch of parameters. There's also a few presets that I need to add more presets. But you can get them to kind of act like locusts that are chasing each other's ass, or you can get them to be repelled from each other, or like orbiting around each other, or just chaotically bouncing, all kinds of or just like a sluggish, like you can create a sort of slew limited response on that. While we're in here, you also have parameter errors, which is like on old synths. The different voices would end up having different kind of values. So the spread control is different voices, drift is different over time, and panel lockup is something that my broken Prophet 600 does, where once in a while a knob will just stop sending values to some of the voices and then it'll start again. And in performance that can make nice effects if you turn the filter up and then you turn it down and it takes a minute before the one voice catches up. Yeah, so anyway, that's all emulated in here. I think I'm going to stop because my voice hurts now. But hopefully that has given you an idea of how to work this thing, and hopefully what's a bit interesting about it. What have I not talked about? These at the top are like input and output meters. Resyncs all your sequences on the next one. All off is a MIDI panic. Yeah. Let's stop for now, I think. 25 minutes without hitting a bug, I'm quite pleased. I should mention, yeah, the clock. My conception of this is because the clock uses Kuramoto sync for the different voices. And there is timing looseness and velocity humanization, and the idea is that you would have one clock voice per part of your song, and then you get a kind of natural movement around each other. But also because there's no latency compensation, you can use the offset control on the clock to align the timing of voices that have different length signal chains. One step of audio signal in here, just an unavoidable max limitation, means that every audio wire introduces one vector of delay, which is like 256 samples or something. So it's not a big deal, but if one thing has a really long chain and one thing goes straight to the output, you're going to notice a slight timing offset. There's things like there's a utility delay block that has time in I/O vectors as one of its sliders. So there's lots of ways of getting things to line up. Yeah, that might be everything. And that's everything for now. What have I not talked about? It does support VSTs. There's an editor, so you have to add a for every VST you want to use, you add it, and then you kind of assign which parameters you want to have visible. But there's an open VST button here, so you can get the editor up. You can also, your blocks, as well as having the kind of interface in here, if you want to make your own blocks, it is quite easy to make your own blocks. It's just a max patch and a .json file. There's loads of documentation to explain how to do it. And Luke, in his own blocks that are down at the bottom here, I can't remember which one it is, but some of his bring up the max patch as is it this one? Yeah, there you go. So you can have blocks that bring up a max patch for you to edit things in if you want. I haven't done that, but if you prefer to do that, you can. Okay, that'll do. Hope you enjoy it.